I can hear that he's getting closer. I'm in the corner, tucked around the corner. I know eventually he's going to get to me.
At that moment, I realized this is a tornado. I'm going to be in it, and I've got probably 5 seconds to figure out what to do next.
I'm forced at gunpoint to stay on my knees. Gun's at the base of my neck.
And when I stood up, I found that the wound to my stomach was pretty bad, as I had to pick up my intestines that were now on the outside of me.
There was a little store there. And so we popped into the store and asked if that was the way to the place that we were after.
And they said, oh yeah, go right up that road there. So we took the RV up this very steep hill. Once we got to the top of this, we found out we were in a field. And I'm thinking to myself, this is not right. Pat did something like a 21-point turnaround to get us back around. Well, by the time we got done doing all that and going back down the hill, we had lost probably an hour and a half of daylight.
And the sun's going down. I'll never forget that sunset. The sun was huge, and it was a burning orange ball. And so we're still up in the field, making our way back down a goat trail, and I felt foolish, you know, having a 30-foot RV. And not going where we're supposed to go. So we got back down to that dirt road. By now, it was way past dark.
You don't want to get caught out in the middle of nowhere in a 31-foot RV in the dark, not knowing where you are in Mexico. It's just not a good idea. We could see the beach. We knew it was there. There's the water, but we're not finding this place. Pat and I had been to Baja over 150 times, so he had. This was my 13th trip, so we were pretty well versed on the things that you should do when you're in Baja, like you don't drive at night and you don't flaunt your wealth. We were aware that it was dangerous and you had to be careful. And we have to make a decision. What are we gonna do, you know? Do we go back out the way we came, drive at night? You know, we could get robbed, we could get stopped. We're thinking, all right, there's that option, or we can stay in this area, right along the beach, right along the water.
There were several fire rings, so this is obviously a place where people had camped. And we thought the lesser of the evils was to stay in one place, get our bearings in the morning, instead of driving around in circles at night. We had cracked a beer, sat at the dinette, and we were lighting a candle and just having a moment. When there's a knock on the door. Bang, bang, bang. So I stand up and I peer out the window, and it's two big guys, about 6'4", 230, both of them. And they're in paramilitary style dress and matching ski masks. So I'm thinking, this is not good.
He says, open up or I shoot. And all of a sudden now we see guns coming out. We're sitting at the table and my heart is pounding. And about that time, Pat says, no, 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 no. We both simultaneously got up out of the seats.
And as I'm standing up and I'm turning on the light, I look and I see the one guy raise his firearm, and there's a blinding muzzle flash and a deafening boom, like a cannon.
Well, I went running on the Stones River Greenway, which is a sort of a suburban trail that runs along a river, and it's mostly wooded on either side. The weather reports had said there was a tornado maybe 70 or 80 miles from us. In Tennessee, it just doesn't mean that much. You hear it all the time. It just didn't register as a problem. The weather looked okay to me. There were clouds, but it didn't look bad. And it wasn't until I turned around at the end of the second mile that the storm blew in. It was terrible rain, but the rain wasn't a big deal. I run in the rain quite a bit. I could hear the thunder, and I could see lightning off to the west. So I'm about a mile away from the car. The lightning moved right overhead. And I could see the lightning striking all around me. It was, it was terribly loud. I could feel my hair standing on end, and I began to realize then I'm in trouble. My body sensed danger. I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't know what it was. From where I was crouched, I couldn't see the sky because I was in the middle of a woods, so all I could see were the trees up in front of me. But the weather stopped, and I heard a rumble off in the distance. The sound kept getting louder, and I stood there for maybe a minute, and it just kept getting louder and louder, and I kept thinking, oh, surely not. This cannot be a tornado. I didn't know what it was, but I knew something very loud and violent sounding was heading towards me. And this sort of debate began inside of my body. My head kept saying, the odds of you being in a tornado are just 1 in a million. There's no way it's a tornado. And my gut kept saying to me, this is a tornado and you're in trouble.
We had just finished up a whole entire week of outreach and service projects in the community, and during that time we always have our kids go back to Illinois to visit their grandparents. We decided that it would be best for Sarah to go and pick up the kids and spend a week visiting her family, which left me all alone that night. I live on a 2-story house, so I'm on the 2nd floor. At about 3 in the morning, I just remember hearing some glass breaking or hitting the ground or something, which totally startled me. As I began to run towards the sound of the glass breaking down the steps, right at the top of the steps, it's as I caught a glimpse of my wife's tennis racket in her case. And I grabbed that and I began hitting the walls as I ran down the stairs, just trying to make noise. I was yelling, "This is my house. This is my house." And as I went down there yelling, "Get out of my house," it was that moment when we saw each other. It was easy to see him. We leave the light on at the bottom of our steps every night. And so where we first met was in a very well-lit area. I had never seen this man before. I had no idea who he was. He didn't belong in my house. He was about 5'8". He was around my height. It just seemed to be kind of a well-built guy. Didn't have a shirt on. He had a large knife, and the knife, it was a large kitchen knife. It wasn't for my house. And I remember making eye contact with him, and for a brief second, just looking into his eyes. His eyes were just so intense. And I remember just telling him, "This is my house, get out." And nothing. He didn't say anything. There was almost a coldness, an absence of any feeling or emotions. He was just there. He didn't say anything to me initially. It was just, he just began stabbing me.
You could just see it rock the whole RV. It just went boom, and glass went flying, and there's smoke everywhere.
It missed me by about this much, shattered 2 panes of glass, so that went flying. It's like from the movies. Couldn't believe it was happening. It was surreal. My first inclination was to bluff, and I said, I've got a shotgun in here. Don't even attempt to come in. Well, that was received with more gunshots.
And I moved backward into more like where the bathroom and the bedroom were to get out of the line of fire.
Laying on the floor in the glass, I look up and I see with the butt of the pistol a gloved hand, black leather glove, bash through the window and reaching in to unlock. All the while, the other guy has his gun trained on me. So I came up with my hands and moved over and slowly unlatched the door. I was dragged out of the RV down on all fours and held at gunpoint. Well, one guy stayed on me. The other guy went into the RV.
I can hear that he's getting closer. And I don't know what I'm gonna do because I don't have an out. There's nowhere I can go. I'm in the corner, tucked around the corner. I know eventually he's gonna get to me.
Well, I was concerned for Lori's safety. What's going on in there? I can hear him ransacking. I can hear him going through the cabinets, tearing things up, ripping the table off the wall. And I don't know exactly what's going on in there, but I'm forced at gunpoint to stay on my knees, guns at the base of my neck. You know, I had no idea if I'm gonna get shot through the back. I didn't know what they were gonna do with Lori, whether we were both goners.
And at that moment, I realized this is a tornado. I'm gonna be in it, and I've got probably 5 seconds to figure out what to do next. Through the trees, I could see blue flashes of light, and I could hear the explosions of transformers and power lines. I saw a car fly through the air, through the trees. I could see a car, and I could hear it honking. Just wild honking of horns. I ran to the nearest tree, and I dropped at the base, and I wrapped my arms around it. It was just the perfect size for me to link my hands on the backside. I laid down and curled my body around the base of the tree. Everything was groaning. The ground was groaning. The sky was groaning. It just felt as though the earth was giving birth to a monster or something. I don't know how to describe it. It sounded as though someone had a million baseball bats that they were just smashing up against things. So I heard all the smashing of the trees above me. I just squeezed tighter onto the tree. I remember the feeling of all my hair standing on its end, on my head and my arms. All my hair was standing up on its end. My tree was trying to leave the ground, and I could tell it was trying to leave the ground. But I had already made my mind up. I was not letting go of that tree. I didn't care where the tree went, I was going with it. But I was in a death grip on that tree, and my arms were locked around that thing, and I was looking up over my shoulder. I could see the wall of the tornado come down the hill, and I saw it coming right at me. And the wind goes from 10 miles per hour to 200 miles per hour all at once. It didn't gradually increase, it just slapped me. And I was watching it, I saw it coming, but it hit my face so hard, the wind did, that it felt like someone had punched me. It hit my jaw, it actually threw my jaw out, and it turned my head this way. And when my head turned this way, I saw 2 feet in the air. And my first thought was, well, whose feet are those? Who's down here with me? And then I realized they were my feet, and that I was actually hanging onto the tree. My body was fully extended, and my feet were flapping in the air like a flag.
And it was when I grabbed hold of him that the first stab took place and went into my abdomen. He was like a pit bull. He just continuously was just stabbing, and I went from trying to, to get him off to just now to protect myself, and there was nothing I could do. He was possessed to get what he wanted. It looked like maybe he was on drugs. There was an intensity with him that I'd never seen before. I'd been stabbed so many times and ended up falling on the ground. And man just came, stood above me and just continued to stab me in the cheek and the temple and my arms. From the moment we made contact, it was just nonstop. Almost as quick as one could throw punches was just stabs just began coming at me. I found myself rolling over and trying to get back up, but only could get onto my hands and knees, and the man jumped back on top of me. I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this is going on right now. But I began to think of my children and literally began almost seeing their pictures on our fireplace mantel, their school pictures. And the reality was beginning to set in that I probably will never see my family again.
My heart's beating 1,000 beats a minute, wondering what's gonna happen next. I know eventually he's gonna get to me, and I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know if he's gonna look around the corner, see that I'm there, and just shoot me. There's nothing I can do. I'm stuck right here in this corner, and whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. And I'll see, It was out of my hands at that point. It was out of my hands. Finally, he gets to where the bedroom is and he looks down at me. So the guy leads me out from the RV and I see Pat on all fours. I know for him, this is not where you'll find him. This is not his personality to be submissive. So they lead me out, or he leads me out, and I'm down on all fours and we're head to head.
We're on knees together, and we're both relieved to see that each other's okay. And that was the most important thing. You take everything, take the RV and its contents, just leave us alone. It's an awful feeling not knowing if you're drawing your last breath. This guy has the gun trained on me, it could just go off. The thought occurred to me that people don't know exactly where we are. They don't have coordinates or an exact place, and we could go missing here. We could disappear. That was a very real prospect to me. While I'm looking down at the top of his boots with the gun to the base of my neck.
I don't know what's gonna happen. And the two of them are circling around.
I'm trying to look up to talk to her, to be eye to eye, but my head's forced back down. And so I'm looking at the top of the military boots, and I hear a zipper.
And next thing I know, I saw a black curtain come through the trees. You could see exactly where the tornado stopped and exactly where it started. Just a very distinct wall. And as it was coming through, of course, it had this huge line of debris that was preceding it. It was just flying, all of it flying past my head. So I'm watching my feet flapping in the air. I'm seeing now the debris is circling me, and it looks like you're inside a big black cylinder that's turning at an incredible speed. And the debris on the inside it's like meteors shooting all around you. There are trees going past your head. An 18-wheeler landed right over my shoulder. I heard it hit. It was the most bizarre, surreal thing you've ever seen. Just debris, trees. I saw the rooftop of a house fly right over my head and off into the wild. And then all of a sudden, I dropped to the ground. And I realized I was in the eye of the storm. And at that point, you could tell you were in the eye. It was so obvious I was in the eye of this tornado, because I could look around and I could see the entire cylinder of the tornado around me. The inside of the tornado was kind of I've heard this before and it's true, it was kind of a greenish gold maybe. It was oddly lit. There's nothing familiar in the eye of a tornado. Everything is upside down. Debris is doing stuff you can't imagine it doing. The images are shocking and wild. And as I'm watching the trees swirl around again, it's just, you can't describe what it's like suddenly to see the woods where you were running only 10 minutes before, now in the air above you. It's like being in some other galaxy. It's all of that mixed up in some bizarre way. Nothing seems normal. Everything is odd. And in the eye of the storm, you can hear your heartbeat. I remember hearing my heartbeat. I could feel my heart beating in my eardrums. It seemed as though it was completely silent inside the tornado until the back wall of the tornado hit. The front wall of the tornado was bad. The back was worse.
It was at that time that he spoke the first words to me, which he wanted to know where the keys and where the money were. And I told him I didn't have any money and my keys were in the kitchen. And so with me on the ground, not moving, he quickly ran into the kitchen and began to look for the keys and came back mad because he didn't find them. And so he picked me up and began to drag me closer to the kitchen. And about halfway between my front door and where the kitchen was, he once again dropped me and went back into the kitchen to see if he could find my keys. I just kind of laid my head on the ground and just began to think about, this is it, I'm gonna die here. I lifted up my head to say, please, I've got 2 kids. For a brief second, I was hoping that he would maybe hear that maybe he had kids, that there would be some type of reasoning or that would make him just stop. But when he came back and just simply walked up to me and stabbed me again, it was the darkest part of my life ever. It was a feeling I've never had experienced before, the fear and the anxiety and just the overwhelmingness that everything is out of my control now. He again asked, where are the keys? And it was at this time that it was almost like a little bit of a anger in me, but I told him it doesn't matter no more, I'm dead.
Zipper. And I'm thinking, this is just so wrong. I mean, take the stuff, just go, you know?
The leader of the two comes up behind me, and he's pulling at the back of my pants, and I'm thinking, oh no, you know, this isn't good. This is not good. And he pulls my pants down to the bottom of my thigh, and he has a pistol. He has a 22 is what it feels like. It feels like an old type 22. And he runs the pistol down, you know, along my bottom and proceeds to attempt to assault me with this pistol. And it was scary. Was he gonna rape me? Was he gonna rape me with this pistol? And it was dark, and I couldn't see him. There was no eye contact, but he knew what was going on, and it was awful. And I knew it was awful for him because he was not the type of guy that was not in charge. And given any other situation, he wouldn't let that happen. But he had no choice. I had no choice, and that's just the way it was. The entire time, he had a gun to my head, and the other guy had a gun to Pat's head. And then this guy went around to the front of me, and he pulled me up, so I was up on my knees, and then he forced me to perform oral sex on him, and Pat was right there. And I knew that, and that was hard. So when the guy was finished, then he paged his partner, called his partner over.
It seemed like an eternity. I mean, it did drag on and on. You know, it wasn't over quickly. So that was a huge challenge, you know, trying to stay calm. I like to be in control, or at least think I'm in control. And so it was emasculating, and not being able to help Lori.
And then he walked away, and he actually moved around behind me.
And one guy was reloading his pistola, dropping the shells and adding new bullets. And I'm thinking, is this it?
The most memorable thing inside the eye of the tornado was that when I looked all the way up to the top of the cylinder, and where the debris inside the tornado was whizzing around in this circular motion, the debris at the top was just sort of floating up and down, and I could see it just sort of dancing up and down. It looked to me as though there were angels up there. And my first thought was, well, I'm dead, and these are angels, and they're just doing a little ballet up above me at the very top of the cylinder. It seemed as though it was completely silent inside the tornado until the back wall of the tornado hit. I could see it over my shoulder as it was coming at me. And the sense I got was that the front wall of the tornado was picking up the debris, but when the back wall hit it, it began to throw the debris down on top of me. That was the first time it dawned on me that I may not live through this. The back wall began to come over me. The noise is deafening. You hear the crashing of things, you can hear metal screeching, and then you just hear the deafening roar of the wind. It's a jet engine blowing right in your face. It felt malevolent. It felt like I was being attacked by something because the debris was just being hurled down on top of me. Something hit my head and split it open. I didn't feel anything. I never felt any pain. I never felt anything hit me. I saw things hit me, but I never felt it. I could see a lot of glass flying over. Some of it was swirling on the inside, and other pieces were just shooting across my line of sight as though they were being shot from a cannon. I saw 3 trees that were maybe, I don't think they were even 10 feet from me. And all 3 of them shot up out of the ground as the back wall came, and they looked like missiles coming up out of a silo. I saw them, one right after the other, just within a second, all 3 of them shoot up and just went straight up into the eye of the tornado, and I just watched them get lost up at the top. I can feel the ground rumbling. I could feel my tree trying to leave the ground. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, that my tree's next.
After the man came back and stabbed me a couple times after telling him that I have 2 kids, he dragged me a little further into the kitchen, and I could feel myself lying in a large pool of blood that had been there, and my cheek could feel the coldness of the tile floor, but I knew I was losing a lot of blood at the time, and I remember thinking it's going to take about 17 hours for someone to come and find me, because our church offices were closed. No one would know I was missing until I didn't show up for church services that night. And I began thinking, I had thought about who was going to be the first one to find me, laying here in a pool of blood. I thought life was over, but I heard 4 words. I heard 4 words that said, "They still need you." And it was at that point in time where everything changed. And it was when I heard those words, "They still need you," that all of a sudden I've got to live. I was gonna get out. And it was at that time that I found myself just able to stand up. And when I stood up, I found that the wound to my stomach was pretty bad, as I had to pick up my intestines that were now on the outside of me. I began to carry them down and walked down my steps and made it to my neighbor's house. As I made it on his porch, I was yelling for help. Someone help me. And the neighbor peeked through his blind to see me holding my intestines on that porch. Because of the condition I was in, obviously he was unaware if the attacker was still out there coming. So he just kept an eye on me on the porch while he called 911. I began to tell my neighbor to give the messages to my wife and my children. There was a sense of peace even at that point, because I now knew that they would be able to hear my final words.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, here we are, out in the middle of nowhere. This is not the way I thought I was going to go out.
We had no cards. They were in charge. The first guy is going through the RV and ripping open cabinets and tearing things up and looking for stash.
Next thing I know, they're leading us back into the RV. Apparently that they had gone in and gotten everything they wanted. And as we're going in, I can see the guy has got our suitcase in one hand, and I'm imagining it was full of all the stuff they took.
The one fella had the guitar strapped on his back, and I could see in the moonlit night the silhouette of them two leaving. All we wanted to do was get out of there. And then that's when we turned our energies towards getting the rig started and being on our way. We're in one piece, but I think collectively we realized that we weren't out of the woods.
I was afraid because what if they heard him start the RV? Were they going to come back? You know, were they going to bring their buddies back? You know, were we going to get shot up going down the road? And I'm not kidding you when I tell you he was doing 80 miles an hour. And I said, Pat, I said, don't drive too fast, you'll blow the tires out. He goes, I don't care. He goes, if we roll back up to the border on rims, he goes, I don't care.
Ever seen a 30-foot RV catch air over dirt roads? So we got out of there, destination border.
I remember thinking, just hang on a little bit longer. Just a little longer and it'll be over with. And then suddenly, I saw the back wall cross over my head, and then I saw it cross the river, and as the back wall crossed the river, the water just began to dance up. It was like it was raining up instead of down, and I just was thinking, I just can't believe this. I cannot believe this is happening. Then it went up into the bank on the other side of the river and up into a neighborhood, and at that point, I knew it was past me. All I could think of was, I cannot believe I'm alive right now. I can't believe I just lived through that. I wanted to do one thing. I wanted to get off that river. I wanted off the trail. So I climbed out from the trees that were on top of me, and when my head emerged, there are literally 4 trees left in that forest. The tree I was holding on to, and 3 other trees around me. Well, when I emerged on the parking lot, I stood there for just a moment and looked around just in shock. Across the street was a huge warehouse. It was destroyed. It had 18-wheelers there. They were all piled up in this angry, mangled, smoking pile of debris. And I saw some people gathering in the parking lot. They were all looking at me with huge eyes, and I kept wondering, I thought they were looking at someone else. I thought I was fine. What I didn't know is I had a white headband on. And because my head was split open pretty badly, the white headband was now dripping with blood. I thought it was mud, and basically blood all over me. And so these 2 guys threw me in the back of their truck and drove me to the hospital. The head gash was bad enough to require 7 or 8 staples. And again, the bleeding was the worst part of that. I had a mild concussion. I had bruises that we don't know where they came from, but bruises on my back and on my chest. They stapled up my head and bandaged up my leg and eventually sent me home that night.
As they approached me, just the look on their faces, I could tell it wasn't good. And they came up, one of them came up to me and began to keep me talking, and later told me that he didn't know what race I was because I was from head to toe completely covered with blood. And he never had seen anything like that. And he talked to me, just kept holding my insides and just kept me talking until the paramedics could come. The doctors rushed in and they were obviously concerned about my abdomen, and were so, after doing all the work for 3 or 4 hours just on my abdomen, they realized there was so much blood still on the table that they rolled me over and found out that there was probably another 15 to 20 stabs on to my back of my head and my neck and shoulder areas that they had to fix. Altogether, I was stabbed 37 times, with the worst being to my abdomen, which the cut was so deep it cut my intestines and my colon. There was probably about 7 stabs that were deep enough the doctor had described how he was able to actually put his finger all the way into those wounds. The first week in the hospital, I don't remember anything because of all of the complications and so forth. It was about a week later that I got to see my kids for the very first time, and they came in and was able to give them big kisses and just to hug them, and my words to them were just love them so much. I survived because God still has a plan for my life, to not only help individuals like this man now in the inner city, but also to become a better husband and a better father to my kids.
The Good Friday tornado cut a path 23 miles long through Rutherford County, and at its widest, it was about a half a mile. It was at its worst when it hit me. It was traveling probably about 40 miles per hour at that point. I survived in part because God was with me, and I don't know why God wanted me to survive. I don't know that. There's no reason I should have survived that. It was a disaster on the river. I came through the eye of a tornado, and I survived. Can you believe it? I survived the eye of a tornado.
I am an ER nurse, so I'm familiar with crisis. I'm familiar with adrenaline pumping and things happening. So I think that we both honed in and just did what we needed to do, given that situation.
For a couple that had been together about 18 months, this cemented the relationship. This was a bonding like no other, because we had just been in a foxhole together. I survived because I kept a cool head and didn't freak out. If either one of us would have done anything different, freaked out, or resisted in any way, I think it would have been a negative outcome.
I think I survived because I remained calm, and Pat and I were on the same page. We both instinctively knew that the only thing we could do given that situation was to do nothing. And here we are. We made it. And I feel pretty good about that. I feel like I did the right thing, that we didn't fight, that we didn't resist, because I think that's what got us out.